Financial leadership is changing. CFOs no longer record history. They make history. This podcast will help you become a better leader, strategic thinker, and digital visionary. Welcome to Secrets of Rockstar CFOs, the ultimate podcast for chief financial officers. Follow along as Jack McCullough engages in exciting chats with accomplished CFOs, learning how they overcame obstacles and positioned their companies for the future. Here's your host, Jack McCullough.
Hello, Rockstars, and welcome to another episode of the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs. I'm your host, Jack McCullough. Before we start out, a big shout out to our sponsors, Plantful and Travel Bank. We have a great guest today, so let's rock. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs. I'm your host, Jack McCullough, and you can follow us online at rockstarcfos.com. And I've been looking forward to this guest for a while because I consider her a personal friend. Melissa Hurrington is the CFO and VP of Operations at Premier Claims. In preparing for this, and as I mentioned, I've known her for a little bit, but one thing I liked on her LinkedIn profile, she describes herself as the CFO and VP of Operations, wife, mom, servant leader, keynote speaker, lifelong learner, and a fierce advocate for women. And we're going to talk about all of those things. So, Mel, welcome to the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited to have this conversation with you. And I'm honored and humbled that you wanted to have me as a guest.
I'm thrilled to. And by now I know enough about your company, but you can certainly describe it not only better, but you CFOs take pride in the places of employment as you do. So what can you tell us about Premier Claims at the 10,000 foot level?
Yeah, so we're a public adjusting firm. Most people have never heard of public adjusting. So we work property insurance claims where we advocate on behalf of the policyholder. So we actually go toe to toe, head to head up against the insurance carriers, advocating on your behalf to hold the insurance carrier accountable to appropriately paying out your insurance claim. So it doesn't even work storms. So I have teams that deploy all across the country when devastation occurs to make sure to be there to help clean up. And then once it's time for that insurance claim process to start, which can be very stressful and overwhelming, to be right there in the thick of it, standing in front of your house, or sometimes, unfortunately, what was your house, and help make sure that you get properly indemnified.
Yeah, and that was amazing to me because, when I just made a judgment on the company simply by the name of the company. Mm-hmm. But you're kind of, doing God's work in some ways. I mean, you're truly impacting the lives of those who are affected by storms and natural disasters and whatnot.
Yeah, it's been such a fun ride of learning an industry that I knew nothing about. I didn't know it existed. And really, it feels to me a bit like David versus Goliath. There's plenty of days we come to work and it's like, who the heck do we think we are going up against these like big names, funny commercials, deep pockets? But it's so much fun and it's so rewarding to see. Many of times we're dealing with companies who are completely shut down. So hotels that can't serve guests, warehouses that have to be completely emptied, production is shut down, and it's somebody else's baby. It's their business that they built from the ground up, and getting them back into business, getting started, getting people moved back into their homes. It is so rewarding to do that work.
No, it's great. And it must be fun because every once in a while, David actually does beat Goliath. And you go like that once and again. So
yeah, we love celebrating around here.
And that's my knowledge of the Bible right there. So
yeah.
David and
that's
Goliath.
The extent of it.
Indeed. So I want to know, just for our viewers, I always like to get a little bit of background on our guests. So where did you grow up?
So I grew up, born and raised here in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm still here. My whole family is here. I grew up, interestingly, I knew in 7th grade I wanted to be an accountant. I feel like that's so lame and I don't tell a lot of people, but this feels like a safe space to say it. My parents owned a business where they lost everything in that process due to some fraud that happened. And in that process, a forensic accountant was hired, and I was hooked.
Wow.
I thought it was so fascinating how it all worked, and I asked so many questions. And from there, it went exactly according to plan until I got out into the real world. I went straight into my MBA program then, and then I went out into the real world, and that didn't go according to plan. Certainly wasn't the direction I thought my career was going to go necessarily. But yeah, so I've always known that I loved accounting specifically. I loved it because I thought it was black and white. You could get to the right answer. The balance sheet would balance. And then, man, there's so much gray in business, isn't there? I had to really learn the hard way, get my, get some scratches and bruises and bleed a little bit along the way to realize how comfortable you have to get in that gray for sure.
Yeah, it's natural. And it's when I remember early in my career, and, I studied accounting academically, and I was surprised, business having gray areas is one thing, but I was surprised how often accounting had gray areas. Mm-hmm. And you tell people in the profession that, it takes a certain amount of creativity to be a successful accountant. Mm-hmm. And they'd look at you, like something was askew. Creativity, they immediately thought, oh, you're
fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. You knew in seventh grade because you're somewhere around our 55th guest. And
okay.
Only one other person has shared that she knew that she wanted to be an accountant about that age.
Yeah.
I'll say you're in really, really good company. It was Davina Walker from.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Or Davina Rankin. I'm sorry. Yeah. And she keynoted our conference, and she was funny. She's like, yeah, I took an accounting class. I realized I was pretty good at it. And I'm thinking probably more than pretty good at it. Mm-hmm. That would be my guess, Davina. So
yeah, but I loved it. The accounting formula always balances. And I was like, this is perfect. It's a little puzzle and you're going to get the answer and you're going to move on. And then now stuck into the analysis paralysis of budgeting and forecasting. And even this morning I said, somebody needs to save me from myself. Stop analyzing it, just step away for a second, cross it off the list. What's done is done. It's just like tweaking this and changing this here and there, because you're never going to get to the right answer. So yes, it's been a lot of learning lessons along the way to get comfortable with that.
Indeed. So I'd love to explore that path a little bit about your path to becoming a CFO. When I should know this, but this is your first ever CFO job. Is that correct?
It is, yes.
So, yeah. So I'd love to learn a little about, what some of the obstacles you overcame, challenges you faced, and maybe even like some key mentors you had along the way. And I know from prior conversations, you had one in particular.
Yeah. The biggest obstacle I overcame, to be honest, was my own mindset. I have debilitating imposter syndrome. It's something I talk very publicly about all the time. So we'll save that conversation. But truthfully, that was the biggest obstacle, was thinking I was capable of becoming a CFO. Because to me, CFOs had it all together. They had all the answers. They were so much smarter than I am, had so much more experience than I am, were better leaders than I was. So that was kind of removed from the table as an option for me. So that was, if I'm being truthful, probably the biggest obstacle along the way. My career to date has been a little bit eclectic, and I think I owe probably little pieces of who I am now to each of them. I went into the traditional public accounting track, doing everybody's a tax accountant during tax time and public accounting. And then I did nonprofit audit, which I loved because you're somewhere new people, new process, new systems every 2 weeks. And that really fed my curiosity and need for new all the time. The issue with that is that nobody likes the auditors. Mm-hmm. No one was ever happy to see me, and it just crushed my soul a little bit. From there, I moved into the nonprofit space, and I fell in love with the fact that your work could be meaningful. As simple as that sounds, it had never really crossed my mind. And I worked for a nationwide nonprofit that serves adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And one of the greatest joys of my life, I actually went back there later on in my career. From there, I worked for a publicly traded larger company, learned a lot along the way of the different dynamics that come with being public. Worked for a brilliant CFO there that mentored me in so many ways, never in an official capacity. but certainly just like day to day, his interactions, how he led, how he showed up just as a human, one of the bigger impacts on my career. Then I went and worked for a company in the hospitality industry. So I, on the financial side, ran a conference center, arena, and ballpark, the food and beverage hospitality. So backstage, the concession stands, the beer lines at that concert. And I love two things in this life, besides my family, of course, but sports and music. And so there is nothing cooler than having your office be backstage at a Taylor Swift concert or the national championship game of whatever sport may be happening. So much fun. But I had two babies while I was at that job. And the reality is, Taylor Swift doesn't do concerts on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. And those late nights and weekends were killing me of like, what the heck am I doing here? But I fell in love with operations at that role of like, if you think about a concert specifically, you have 45 minutes before the concert to sell sometimes $1 million worth of food and beverage. And so figuring out like the intricacies of how many beer lines do you have. When we switched, I was there at a time where there was like a big switch to credit card. Like everybody went to events and showed up with cash. That was a thing, if you can even remember it. Now everything's cash free, right? But if you switch to credit cards, the world was pushing towards that, but it slows down your transaction time by like 0.35 seconds per transaction. And how much is that going to impact your beer sales? And but wow. You can't tap too many kegs because there's not a concert tomorrow, so you're going to spoil them. And keeping those costs under control, like I really fell in love with the intricacies of operations there. But I got tired. I had a baby at home and I worked the last Olympic swim trials of Michael Phelps. And that was 20-hour days in a row. And I was like, something's got to give. I'm tired. And I actually went back to the nonprofit, and then serendipitously, Kyle Maring, the CEO of Premier Claims, and I met each other, and the conversation evolved from one thing to the next. And all of a sudden, a very risk-averse person, I found myself jumping all in to the wild, wild west of a startup in my first CFO role.
It's interesting because it strikes me that you're sort of in the best of all worlds, because while the company is not a nonprofit, it's very mission focused. Yes. Right. I mean, and I'm not knocking anyone's career choices, but not a lot of us work for companies that we can truly say we're making the world a better place.
Yeah.
And you're one of those companies that can say so.
I think so. Yeah. I don't know if insurance carriers feel that way, but that's okay.
Fair point.
Fair. Yeah, it was something that there was a piece of me when I fell in love with the nonprofit world that good, bad, or indifferent, like, was this going to almost ruin work for me? Because when you are so mission driven and you get those feel goods, am I going to get them anywhere else? And I am in the perfect world here of a growing and scaling company. It doesn't have true nonprofits have unique challenges to them of having to consistently do more with limited and decreasing resources. But to be able to come here and still get that mission driven, feel good about what you do, truly understand how you impact the world around you. So I love it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And we talked a little about some of the mentors you have, but I assume that you're probably a pretty coveted mentor within your company, both within F&A and across the entire enterprise. But I want to sort of understand your philosophy on being a mentor, and the fact that you mentioned being a servant leader specifically in your LinkedIn profile. What's that all about? How do you execute being the servant leader to multiple people?
Well, I'm a firm believer that I work for my employees, not the other way around. So in a perfect world, and we don't live in it, but we can try our hardest to get there. My job is just to stay out ahead of them and remove the obstacles that they point out, so that hopefully they can just maintain pace. Right? Do you have the resources that you need to get there? If you're thinking of a marathon, like, do you have the water that you need, the training that you need, that 7 or 8 mile hit of sugar that you need. I'm not a marathon runner, so I'm not sure why I chose that analogy for something I don't even know anything about. But I imagine, right?
Yeah.
You need all of those things and those resources and like to stay out ahead of it and provide that encouragement of you're right on pace, you're doing this. And it is one of my personal core values is empowerment. And so I very much believe in empowering my teams. And nothing gets me more excited than watching them win, watching them evolve, especially in the startup world, like startup to scale up. It can be really aggressive career growth for people. The expectation is kind of that as an employee, you evolve and grow as quickly as the company evolves and grows. It can be a bit of a pressure cooker. It's not for everyone. But here in that kind of startup space, I've told so many people who have worked with me almost from day one, or at least year one, who have reported directly to me the whole time that like, I don't even recognize the person that came in for the interview. Like that person is such a shell of who you are now, and watch them evolve and grow. And that's so important to me. And then I love mentoring other leaders, both inside of the company, and I mentor a handful of people outside of the company, some of them in the CFO space, some of them in their own journeys in life in different career paths. And it's something that I love. I will say I get as much out of mentorship as I imagine that they get out of it as well. It's a good opportunity to stop and slow down. And I always say half the time, if I'm giving advice or opinion, it always ends up being the exact same thing I needed to hear in the moment.
Yeah.
Like, wow, maybe you should take some of your own advice and do that. But it forces you to stop and pause and give perspective. I'm very lucky to have many formal and informal mentors throughout my career. I think, and you asked it earlier, I didn't even answer it, but the one that had the most impact on me was I actually asked a VP of sales to be my mentor. I grew up in a sales family. Both my dad and brother are national sales directors their whole career. So I can hang in there with the best of them for sure, but it's different when it's different when it's not family. And I asked this VP of sales because there's something about a salesperson, like when they walk into the room, they own the room, right? Like they are the person that controls the energy and brings the energy and can leave that lasting impression and can handle, controls where the conversation is going, and hopefully fantastic speakers, because they're talking all day long, right? Like you have to have that gift of gab. And it was something I saw, yes, to be a CFO, you have to have the basics of accounting and FP&A. If you can't do those things, you're not going to be successful in it. But man, the role has changed. Has changed, and I'm not spending much time in my office. I'm out in front of the company, in front of people, in front of banks or whoever else it may be. And I saw so much characteristics in the specific VP of sales that it was like, that is what I'm missing. That I want to walk in and own it.
Great instinct. And I tell young people who are on the cusp of getting their first CFO job, I often share, look, there are probably a dozen controllers who could do the CFO job. Mm-hmm. Functionally, they could do it, right? Because, they know a lot of it and they can learn the rest of it as they go. But the ones who are really going to excel are the ones who are strategic, who think with the customer in mind, who understand sales, who understand marketing, who understand their operations, and can communicate effectively. So to me, it's a very wise decision to have someone as a mentor who has that sales type of background, because what's more important than understanding the customer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like knowing what somebody's objections are going to be before they even say it, and lowering their resistance in a conversation because you're saying the thing that they were already thinking and 8 steps ahead of them. The ones that do it well, and it served me really well in this role for sure.
Makes a whole lot of sense. And earlier you referenced the CEO, Kyle Maring. Yeah. And I know from prior conversations, you two have a great relationship, but I'm wondering, it may have even started out great, but like any relationship, it just requires work. And I'm just wondering, what is that relationship dynamic like? And, it's interesting, and you've been a CFO for a few years, so you might have seen this, but CFOs for 10 years have been saying that their most strategic partner is the CEO.
Mhm.
But it's been the last 2 or 3 years that the CEOs are saying that the CFO is their most strategic
Mhm.
partner, at least in my worldview. So what's that partnership dynamic like?
It depends on the day. Like we fight in like husband and wife or brother and sister, but it's rooted in respect. I think both of us have forced each other to grow so much. He is a true visionary CFO. I mean, sorry, CEO as well. I think most CEOs have to be a little bit, but he's that like serial entrepreneur, visionary CEO. I want this whole new idea done yesterday for free. Why aren't we going fast enough? If anybody's worked for one, they know the type, and they can be a little bit exhausting. So he is naturally like fast, 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 go, 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 figure out how, don't tell me no. And I am naturally conservative, risk averse, dig my heels in the sand. You can't just do that. It's not that easy. Hold on, let's think through it. And we are this really good yin and yang to each other. He pulls me along, I slow him down, and at the end of the day, it's rooted in respect. He jokingly and lovingly will sometimes come into my office, and he'll be like, I always know I can come in here and have Melissa ruin a good time. And I'm like, you mean save the business from your crazy idea because you were about to go chips all in on something that you thought about last night, right? Bring you back down to reality, but that's a hat I'm willing to wear. And he has pushed me so far outside my comfort zone, and we have done things together and achieved things that have exceeded my wildest imagination as well. So he is from upstate New York. He's a go, 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 go kind of guy anyway, very direct. In Nebraska, there's a saying, Nebraska nice. So we're very like careful, certainly not Boston, Jack. It is fish out of water there. Okay. I was like, oh, people really yell at cars that are going past them. Got it. I've never once used my horn in my life on my car. Okay. So I can be like very Nebraska nice too. And it has been so refreshing to have somebody come in that like skip the niceties. We got an issue. Here's what we're going to do about it, and get straight into it. So the relationship, we're very close. We're very direct with each other. He calls me up to greatness all the time of like, no, you really can. You are capable of this. You can do more. You need to think outside the box here. You're being stubborn. You're being too conservative, like push it a little bit further. And then I like to say that I keep them at least slightly on track. So it's there's healthy conflict between us. But the one thing that I will say, and we can fight it out with the best of them, I'll tell you that much. But typically when we fight in my office, and people will walk past. We got like floor to ceiling windows, and they'll be like, "Uh-oh, there go mom and dad again." But when that door opens, we are on the same page every time. Like, let's work this out. Let's come to an agreement. There's no group think, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. Like, there is no group think happening here. My ideas aren't all great. His ideas aren't all great. And we have no problem saying that to each other. He for sure, and he would say it if you asked him, like, I am for sure his right-hand man. I am the person that he would go to for what's next, bounce an idea off or anything else. That like we talk a lot in CFO Leadership Council about like the change to the CFO being very strategic. I am without a doubt that strategic partner to him. My voice matters. It has a place. And we work it out and are a united front.
No, that sounds great. And I have a hunch that your company is going to be getting a bunch of resumes from people who want to work for someone like him. But
oh yeah, I mean, we have a good time.
That's the thing. My first CFO job, the guy I worked for, he was just very complex. And for me, as a first-time CFO, I really struggled with it. And I was really lucky because I happened to be friends with the guy's wife. And she gave me advice that was invaluable. And one thing about him, he was a very smart guy. He had a bachelor's and a master's from, I think, Cornell. and he was also in the Lacrosse Hall of Fame of all.
Okay.
So she's like, you have to remember when you're talking with Bruce, he's a scholar, one of the smartest people you're going to come up against. He's also a dumb jock. And you need to figure out which one of those two you're talking to. And then if you need to talk to the other one, you've got to bring them back to that. So sometimes you need the dumb jock, right? And
here at the office, people will come in and be like, so Kyle sent me this email or Kyle sent me this text, and I know you speak Kyle. I'm like, I do, read it off. Here's what he actually meant by that. I speak Kyle fluently.
Interesting. So I want to chat a little bit about, some of the challenges that your company's going through right now. And, I guess the obvious one is, what are some of the biggest challenges and opportunities in the next few years facing Premier? And given, especially, you're probably more hard hit than a lot of companies with the volatility that seems to be the new way of life for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the volatility is wild. So we as public adjusters, without getting like too much into the nitty gritty, but I do think it's A, fascinating, and B, important context to the conversation. We're in a very complex cash flow company. So as public adjusters, we are straight contingency fee. We take 8% of the check. So if we get nothing released, we are owed nothing. There's no fine print anywhere, right? It is a straight agreed upon percentage of the check. Get $10 million released, take the percentage of that. Get $10 released, and that has in fact happened before, take your percentage of that. We work mostly commercial property insurance claims. Those claims take on average 6 to 9 months to pay out. And so as a scaling company, we have been faced with this challenge of I am consistently, from a cash flow cycle, I am here, and we've signed claims via growth up here. I have to work those claims. I have to inspect those claims. I have to travel to the claim. I have to have the attorneys that are going to review the policies on the claims for a company that we haven't yet cash flow become yet. And so we're in a very complex cash flow company, especially scaling. There's ebbs and flows of it if we are remaining flat, but certainly with scaling, it brings unique challenges to it. So as far as like some of the biggest challenges that we face are, there's a certain reality that insurance carriers, if you take premiums that they paid you minus checks that they write for damages or losses, whatever it may be, they are not profitable. They have massive multi-billion-dollar losses. As companies, they're profitable though, because they take your premium and they invest it to the tune of, I think like Allstate, it was $45 billion in annual investment revenue. That brings them to positive as a company. So when the market is volatile, when those earnings aren't there for an insurance carrier, they get a bit slower to write the checks. And then Mother Nature is big mad right now, right? The storms, like whatever the cause, we don't have to have that debate here on a CFO podcast, but you cannot deny that they are more frequent and more intense. So I would not want to be the CFO of an insurance company right now and having to figure out how you're going to do that. So we have more and more and more multi-billion-dollar loss events like Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton. We had a tornado that hit Omaha this year, right in our backyard, that I think it was estimated to do $8 billion in damage by the time all the claims and everything were filed. It's happening more and more and more, but the premiums, although we all would argue differently, like the premiums aren't changing that much. So that top line cash flow for a carrier isn't changing, but there's more and more losses getting paid out. And then if the market dips, that's how they survive. And then we survive based on them writing checks. So if they don't have the ability and cash flow themselves to write the checks, like where the heck does that leave us? So we are hyper focused on efficiency right now. And that's not unique to us. It's every company is doing it. But there's a reality for me of, I think it will get tougher and tougher to get the carriers to write the checks. I think it will be longer and longer between filing the claim and getting the check written. But we still have aggressive goals as a company of scaling and growing, and we still have financial needs that we need to meet. So we have to do more with less. It does feel like for the last 2 years, it's been a constant topic of conversation of like, we're tiptoeing around a recession. Is it going to happen? Is it not? And we seem to have fared just fine so far. But should a true recession happen and the market collapse, where does that leave us exposed in an already complicated cash flow process? So those are the things. It's not exactly how you answer the question, but certainly that's what's keeping me awake at night in my role.
No, that makes sense. And it's got to be frustrating because there's so many variables that negatively impact your business. And it didn't sound like very many of them were really within your control. If you can influence the weather.
But your control is how you react to it. The weather, especially, it feels like a pro and con of, okay, so there's more people that need our help. There's more people, statistically, not opinion, that are receiving denials from their insurance carrier. So in terms of like business development, the world is our oyster here. There's more and more people that need help with their claims, but I think a less and less likelihood of them getting paid out quickly, and at the level where we feel like the insured is properly indemnified. So like this hyper focus on to bring in the same amount of cash flow, we have to do more with less and get really strategic there.
That makes sense. So I want to ask you this. Actually, I don't want to ask you this. I'm legally required to ask you the question. Gen AI and other modern technologies, how are you using it at Premier to, not only to create a more efficient organization, but to give yourself a lasting competitive advantage? And I know probably like a lot of CFOs, cybersecurity, data privacy, those are kind of job one for you, right? But
yes,
yet there's this technology that you can't ignore.
Yeah. We are all in on AI, and we have been for about 18 months. And it's so exciting, the possibilities, and it layers across every single department across the company. I am not at a place where I trust it necessarily, especially generative AI for like end-to-end automation. So right now we're really integrating AI and generative AI. I call it in a draft form. Like nobody should be starting anything with a blank page. Let it serve a draft. Let it start to pull research for you. We've layered a lot of AI over, we've built a proprietary software in-house where we will actually virtually monitor your properties of former clients. So I know which property you own. I know the square footage of it and how many floors it has, because at the end of the day, like hail is going to impact your roof, right? So if I can take your X amount of square footage divided by 2 floors, then it's reasonable to assume that your roof is X amount of square feet, right? And so I know the opportunity of the claim size there. And then we have that layered over weather software. So I know within 15 minutes, the property that you own, how big it is, how big the potential claim is, the size of the hail that fell. So I know you have 1.75 inch hail that fell for 3.5 minutes at X angle, and impacted your property, and potentially that you have a claim that you might need help with. So a lot of that is AI based, certainly integrating AI into our customer service, which is huge. How can we keep our insureds updated? I view AI as like, let's automate the mundane stuff and let's use the people for the things that people are brilliant at, building relationships. So especially when you start talking hurricane response, it's a different beast. It's emotional. There's so many complex human layers to a hurricane response. If I can have my customer service team on the phone checking on you as a human and not giving you the update on here's where your RCB is at, can you give me your contents list? We can handle all of that for you. I can give you an AI chatbot where you can pull whatever information you want. Here's where we're at with the carrier. When is my inspection? And it can spit it out for you. And then I can have my reps on the phone checking on you as a human. Are you doing okay? Is everyone adjusting? Did you find a place? We like send out all the smoke signals to anyone, especially like a hurricane response. We need places to stay and have help people get into apartments, have help people get into temporary office spaces, whatever it may be. If they can spend their time doing that instead of doing the updates and things, that's really powerful. Certainly our actual public adjusters use it quite a bit as well, again, in draft form, but help pull the code in that specific county and how can things come to you instead of having to go out and do it. Trust but verify, certainly, with all of those things go into the resources. But it's a little bit of a rabbit hole that you can go down and go round and round and round, but hyper focused right now on specifically generative AI and then anything that can be automated.
No, yeah, that's the name of the game. So I want to chat a little bit, some of the things we discussed early. And, and before you and I knew each other particularly well, I followed you on social media, and more CFOs are embracing social media over the last couple of years than I've actually seen a big change. I won't say in the last year, but in the last 3 years. But you were amongst the first CFOs that I knew anyway, who were using it effectively. And what was the attraction to social media? And, why did you see this as a tool sort of before a lot of your peers did?
It was very self-serving. So it was a very specific moment in time, and that moment was COVID. And I won't bore you with that too much, but COVID, like those early days, like you were still going to work. It was still is this going to be a thing? Something's bubbling up, so much anxieties, but the world hadn't shut down yet. And then that shutdown happened, and it happened so fast and furious. And everyone's head in the company snapped to me. And it was the last thing I was expecting. The books are closed. The projections are done. Why are you asking me? I'm just the CFO, right? And everyone's head.
Can you hold on one sec?
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're purple. I don't know if Jeff sees
that.
it too.
Here, I'll turn my video back off.
Okay.
There we go.
You want to pick up again where you would just close the books?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So everyone's head snapped towards me, and it was the last thing that I expected as the CFO. And I had never been through a global pandemic either, so I didn't know. And I had so many anxieties, all of the anxieties everybody else was feeling from a health perspective. Is my family going to be okay? From the leadership perspective of just the natural, how are we going to become remote overnight? How are we going to make sure that our team's accountable? All of those things, to then some real anxieties and fears of, we work property insurance claims, and to do that, I have to visit the property. So what's the game plan when nobody's going into the outside? And it was crippling and suffocating. And I was so certain in my head that I was going to be the CFO that had a company crumble to pieces in a global pandemic because I didn't have it all together. And everyone else appeared to. They all appeared to have a game plan. I'm a big believer in utilizing your network. So I leaned into my network, and I called and texted and emailed and LinkedIn anyone I thought would send me a response of just like, what's your game plan? I'm freaking out. And person after person after person responded and said, I don't know. What's your game plan? And the level with each response, it felt like a 50-pound brick just being lifted off my shoulders of, I thought I was the only one. I really thought everybody else had it together. And my husband took a picture of me sitting at our kitchen table, because I didn't even have a home office. I had no need for it. Sitting at my kitchen table. My daughter was just shy of 2 at the time, crawling up on my lap, and I am business casual from the waist up, and I am yoga pants and fuzzy slippers from the waist down. She's crawling all over me during a Zoom call, and he took this picture, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to say the quiet part out loud. And I posted that picture to LinkedIn. a long post, but essentially I said, this is hard. This is hard as an employee. This is hard as a leader. This is hard as a business. This is hard as someone who counts on a business for a paycheck to come from them. This hard. So give yourself grace, give the people around you grace. And the post went unexpectedly viral. I like to joke that had I known it would, I would have like done my hair before he took that picture or something, I swear.
But I'm sure that the imperfection of it made it perfect.
It was, yeah, it was spontaneous in the moment for sure. And I had message after message after message from people saying exactly what I was feeling of like, thank you. I thought I was the only one. I thought it was just me that was freaking out. I thought it was just me that didn't know we were going to make it through this. And that was it was like this micro moment that led to a true macro movement for me of, I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to be the voice, frankly, that I needed. And I tell everyone, I reiterate all the time, like it's very self-serving. Most of the things that I say on social media are the things that I needed to hear in the moment. It's the things that I need a reminder of. It's the perspective that I need to force myself to step into those shoes and look at it. And more than anything, just publicly, what an opportunity to be the voice that would have meant so much to me in those moments, those spirals of I'm not cut out for this, I'm not capable of this. And it's been an unexpected journey, but certainly a really fulfilling one.
Yeah, it's interesting because every time there's a crisis, it seems like the perception of CFOs goes higher. And I don't think it's that employees don't trust CEOs, but they know that CEOs they're always silver lining, glass half full types of people. Yeah. And that's great. That's what makes them CEOs. But sometimes the CFO, even if they say the same thing, she says what she means and she means what she says, right? Mm-hmm. And hopefully we're all like that, but CFOs in particular are known for that sort of thing. So it's great that you were able to step up and, I'm sure you were extraordinarily helpful to dozens of other CFOs going through the exact same thing.
I like to think so.
Because it's it's the name of the game. It's a very lonely job. I found that out when I became one that, I know there are divisional CFOs and whatnot, but you're one of only one sometimes in companies. And who do you turn to in those moments, right? So
no one's coming to save you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to chat also, you've made it clear from, your social media and just other situations I've been with as in your own words, a fierce advocate for women leaders, which I think, I support very strongly, although I also recognize I'm a background player. Largely. But sort of what inspired that? Did you envision yourself that way when you were in high school and college, or, is this something that just kind of came along?
There's probably always been a little piece of me that's been a bit like, I am woman, hear me roar. I don't know if there was like a defining moment in my career where I really stepped into that. It's just something that I've always believed of. My dad sold power tools growing up. That's what he did, national sales manager for a large power tool company. And like, I wanted to go to his shows on the weekend and take the power tools. And at one point it was like a little bit of his sales shtick of like, look, the tools are so easy. My 8-year-old can use them. But there was like always a little bit this like rough and tough and tumble version of me, certainly growing up, that fed into it. But I just believe wholeheartedly that women belong in all places where decisions are made. One of the best quotes out there by RBG for sure. And they do. And it's time for change. And change doesn't come without resistance. It doesn't come without people feeling uncomfortable. And it certainly also doesn't come without people willing to kind of stick their neck out for it. And I don't know what it is that made me willing to stick my neck out for it, but it's something I believe so passionately in that I want to leave the world in a different place than I found it. I want to, and that's probably too big of a statement, like who do I think I am? But I want to leave the company in a different place than I found it. And where the fire really grew to a next level for me was when I had a daughter. So I had my son first, love him, but there is something unique about being a woman in the C-suite raising a daughter. And I got here, right? I did it. I did it. But I did it on the heels of other women who paved the path for me, for sure. And it lit a fire for me of I want Layla, my daughter, to be in a place where she is seen for all of her unique qualities and all of her value and doesn't have a ceiling placed on her or isn't told to, kind of stay within a box or to tone herself down in any way. And it's just something that's become a true passion for me.
Well, good for you. For me, it was, I was probably a typical late 20s, early 30s guy. I wasn't, hopefully I wasn't sexist in any way.
Yeah.
But for me, the reality hit when I became a CFO, because, I always heard that stuff that, women make 59 cents on the dollar and some other things. And I'll be candid, I simply didn't believe it.
Yeah.
Until I had access to payroll.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing engineers, they literally were making 59 cents. It was almost like exactly the number that you read in the media. And I saw like great engineers being paid less, who are women being paid less than men who were not as good. And by the way, reported to them. Mm-hmm. It's like, so you had somebody making more than their boss and they weren't as good as their boss. Their boss wasn't their boss just because they were older and because they're there first. They're actually, and it stuff like that and, stock option distribution, it's like, what? It just angered me. And you see that often enough, you can live angry or you can be outspoken and try to do something about it. So,
yeah. And I think I can't change the world, but I can change the room that I'm in or leveraging a LinkedIn platform in a way. And we certainly aren't going to solve the problem on this podcast either. But for me, there was this real, not a light bulb moment, but like a light bulb turned on in my head at some point. And I wish I could tell you exactly when, that yes, there's massive systemic issues. Women have to own our piece in this too. We will never be paid the same for men if we don't ask for the same as men. We aren't going to reach gender parity. Like, we're not going to have 50% of women in CEO seats in the Fortune 500 companies if you don't apply for the job because you don't think that you're capable of it. You don't think you're qualified enough for it. Like, nobody's going to give it to us. So I realized that that's where I can make an impact. I can challenge the norms, but a lot of the norms are us, right? Like, we're running this 100-yard dash. And do the men have a second advantage that's given to them? Maybe. Is statistically proven? Yes. But then women were throwing out this barrier and this one and this one. And suddenly we're running 100-yard hurdles while they're running a 100-yard dash of hurdles that we put up ourselves. And then crying foul when we reach the finish line a little late. And it's never going to change the advantage that maybe somebody had out ahead of us. But there's like some harsh realities, I think, that as women we have to face. Imposter syndrome is not unique to women. It's across all genders for sure. But those, I think we let it get to us a bit more. And that's easy to do when you also have societal and systemic pressures on you. It's easier to believe those thoughts to be true. But again, like, you're not going to get paid the same if you don't ask for it.
Yeah.
You're not going to get the job if you don't apply for it. You're not going to get the venture capital funding if you don't ask for it. That, like, we got to do our part in this as well. And I think a lot of times we build this wall that we have to get over, and then I don't want to say complain because that's putting it down a bit, but some reality, and then like complain when we're tired when we get over it. And it's like, gosh, nobody asked you to build that wall. There's enough walls that we have to climb because of the realities of the world, but so many of them we put up ourselves. And I just realized that, like, that's the impact that I can make, whether it's one person, whether it's 500, time will tell. But helping other women believe in themselves, make the ask, demand change, that those little micro moments can truly turn into something major.
No, that's fantastic. So I want to wrap this up. Just a couple of questions for you. And as I think I like to change the perceptions of finance and accounting professionals.
Okay.
So I like to, and that maybe there are people who think we're a little dull. But so I'd like to ask you like a fun fact. Do you have like an interesting hobby or an unusual hobby? Or is it, something that you did in your childhood, or just anything that sort of changes the perception that people might have about finance and accounting people? And I think I know what yours is, but I'm going to let you say. So,
all right, we'll see if it is or not. So, a fun fact about me is that I was a dancer. I thought that's what I was going to do with my life. So, a classically trained ballerina that in the 90s fell in love with hip hop, because who didn't in the 90s fall in love with hip hop? I mean, I know you didn't. It was you loved your rock bands, but fell in love with hip hop. And if you would have asked 16-year-old me, despite the fact that I knew I was going to study accounting, getting a college degree was a non-negotiable to remain in my family. I was going to move to LA and be in music videos. That's what I wanted to do with my life. I actually ran a dance studio for a while. So that's a fun fact about me, is that somehow I went from like super creative side to straight accounting CFO track there, but it's very much music and movement is very much still a part of my life to this day.
Yep, I got it right, by the way. I did.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I remember because when I interviewed for Forbes, that came up.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
it did.
So, no, that's fantastic. So, and the other thing I want to ask you about is, as I mentioned, on your LinkedIn profile, you start off with, I think, either husband, mother, or mother, husband, before you get into your professional life. And a lot of times I do ask people about the work-life balance thing, and a lot of them admit that they fail at it. And I think they're being a little hard on themselves because we're all doing the best we can with it. But do you have any, secrets that have made it work? Because you certainly have, more so than most.
Boy, it doesn't feel like it some days, I'll tell you that much, but it's about priorities. A couple of things. So I do, like, my catchphrase is I'm a wife first, a mom second, and your employee third. And I'm not interested in rearranging that. I'm very fortunate to work for a CEO who is understanding of that. He might not have been. I will tell you, he was single and childless in my original interview with him. And I was like, I know this is nails on a chalkboard for you, but you live, sleep, eat, breathe, die, premier claims, and I'm not going to. I got a whole family back home that I'm going to be there for that. But it's about priorities. Shonda Rhimes, in a commencement speech, said once, if you see me succeeding in one area of my life, I promise you I'm failing in another. And it's so accurate. But how I help prioritize, and there was a video I saw once, I've never been able to find it again. So if you find it, send it to me. I would love nothing more than to give true credit where this video came from. That we're all juggling a bunch of balls, and it's about knowing which one is glass and you can't drop because it's going to shatter, and which one is rubber, and if you drop, it's going to bounce. And so that's the big thing for me, is like, what are the moments that I need to be there for? And then which ones are rubber and are going to bounce? Like, a super quick example, as we wrap up here, we had a law firm that we work very closely with on insurance claims. They flew their whole firm to Omaha, Nebraska for a day, and they planned a whole dinner. And by all traditional norms, I should have been at that dinner. And I was like, yeah, it's just going to be a no for me. And it was like, oh, do you have something going on tonight? I don't. I would love to say that it was a choir concert or a baseball game. It was just going to be a no. I put in my day. I'm going to go home. I'm going to see my kids after school. We're going to eat dinner together as a family, and you guys can catch me up if something important happened after. And guess what? Nothing important happened besides bonding and, some thanks and gratitude and relationship building. But I will give that to you during the workday, and I will work most nights of the week after my kids go to bed. I don't have a problem getting the laptop back out, but that it's about 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. I'm in mom mode. I'm nobody's CFO. If the building's on fire, call the firefighters, right? Don't call me.
Makes a lot of sense. So cool. Well, this has been great. I really enjoyed the time, and I know our listeners are going to think it's fantastic. So the final question I have for you, and it's almost redundant with the last 50 minutes or so, but if you could think of one or two kernels of advice for the next generation of CFOs, and, it can be anything, things they should be studying, how they manage their career, whatever it might be.
My biggest piece of advice is to work on your EQ. I firmly believe that IQ is going to be able to be outsourced to AI. There's going to be a certain level of competence that's required, but IQ can be outsourced and it will be outsourced. Work on your emotional intelligence, put in the work, read the books, do the podcast, do the training, spend a ton of time in front of the mirror, but work on the EQ is as you climb the ladder and get into the roles, EQ is going to take you so much further than IQ ever will.
71% of CFOs say managing T&E absorbs too much company time. That's why TravelBank simplifies T&E. 45,000 companies use TravelBank to book travel in policy, quickly submit expense reports, reconcile card transactions, and unify reporting. Learn why U.S. News and World Report named TravelBank the best booking, travel, and expense tool at travelbank.com. That's travelbank.com.
That wraps up this episode of the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs. A huge thank you to our sponsors, Plantful and TravelBank. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review at rockstarcfos.com. Until next time, rock on.
Thank you for listening to this episode. To continue your exploration of this role that focuses on strategy, leadership, finance, and technology, listen to more episodes of the show at rockstarcfos.com. Join this revolution, episode by episode. Push yourself to achieve great things and unlock the best opportunities available to you. CFOs are creating a legacy, and it's time for you to leave your own unique imprint on the world today. That's all for now. See you on the next one.